All right, guys, welcome. Welcome to Super Monday. For those who have been with us before, welcome back. For those that are new, Super Monday is all about our monthly stream to unlock and share with you guys insights and trends that we see. So let's get started. So a little bit about the agenda. Today we're going to talk about runners. We're going to talk about runner trends, types of runners, and themes. And we're going to go ahead and talk about marketability tips to help you improve your runner. And we're going to introduce Unity's runner template. So for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Zvi. I've been doing these Super Mondays for quite some time, and I've worked on some of the titles that I hope you played. For example, Tall Man Run, Going Balls, and My Mini Mart. So let's go ahead and get into it. Before we talk about that, let's talk about the Iron Source and Unity merger, including Supersonic. It's going to bring, it's all about unlocking a lot more value for you, the developer, moving forward and working on your games and on your development. And we just started, and there's a lot more in the pipeline, so stay tuned. It's very, very exciting. Now, we're going to go ahead and encompass all that and cover it all. At the end, there'll be a Q&A, so make sure to share your Q&As in the comment, your questions in the comments, and we'll make sure to address them at the end. If we do miss any of them, follow us on social media, and we'll go ahead and answer those on social media if we don't get to them today. So let's get into it. What have we seen that is trending for runners? So if we look past at the past 3 years, it's pretty clear that almost in every quarter throughout the last 3 years, there has been some form of a mega hit runner. Very familiar mechanic. There are a lot of great examples like I'm sharing with you guys on the screen here. I'm going to mention my favorites, Join Clash and Tall Man Run, of course. And you can see it throughout, so it's pretty clear that it was a good place for us to start when it came to unlocking value for the developer. So let's talk about the type of runners we've seen. One of the clear type of runners, or the original type of runners we would talk about, are opposite narrative runners: good, bad, big, small, rich or poor. These are great examples. This is before we really saw gates kick in, and this is one example of a really strong type of runner that has worked well in the past couple of years. Another type of runner that was also very, very sticky and had pretty amazing impact on the market are female character runners that had some kind of female themanology that involved some kind of supporting secondary mechanic like stacking. Here's a great example: high heels. We also have games like Hair Challenge and Nail Stack that really impacted and were quite sticky throughout the past year. Another one to take a look at is dynamic characters. So whatever input of lack of input by the user has almost an immediate output on the character. Something that you're personally connected to. This is a great example: Rope Man Run. If you make a wrong decision, that thread gets pulled, and then you might be in trouble. So you have to hurry up and make that right decision. We have Blob Runner, Human Vehicle, also very, very strong examples on dynamic characters runners. Another one that this is more recent that has been pretty trendy throughout the last year. I think it started with Count Masters is a great example where it actually exploded, were the gates, multiplier gates, making the user feel like his decision making has a direct correlation on the outcome. Very, very impactful gameplay, very satisfying. You see everything happening. Count Masters is a great example. Aerofest is another good one. And of course, also Tall Men, which we'll talk about a little bit more, how I see it combining multiple these mechanics, these supportive type of runners, and sub mechanics. So what would you want to consider when you're working on your runner? One of the things that we've seen, for example, as a supporting mechanic, is stacking. So I've had also the pleasure of working on a title like Stacky Dash. These stackings, up, down, to the sides, forward stacking, are very, very clear mechanics and supportive mechanics. So that clarity really has tremendous impact on also gameplay and marketability. And Maya will touch on marketability tips a little bit later on the road. Definitely something that you guys should consider if you're working on a runner. Another one, a recent one, some that it's pretty much still very much active are the gates, multiplier gates, with those transformations, that almost immediate impact. So if I take, for example, Tallman Run, which is, like I said, my favorite, then you'll look at both dynamic characters being impacted, multiplier gates, clear gameplay, almost these choices of, am I going big, am I going small, am I going wide, am I going thin? It really has and all that put together very, very well resulted in this mega hit that is Tallman. So that was a great job, and shout out to VectorUp. So what I would want to share with you when you're thinking about your runner, where can you take that particular runner, is the theme. So themes that we know that work are money themes, car themes. We just launched Get the Supercar. We know that weapons work as well. And there's other ones that you should consider. Also, female themes is definitely something that might help you stand out more than the competitors. All right, so that is what I've seen for trends, and I'm sharing with you. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hand it off to Maya from the publishing team, and she'll share with you her insight on the marketability and how to really take it from there. Maya, it's yours.
Hi everyone, I'm Maya at the publishing here at Supersonic alongside Zvi. And I'm going to talk to you about marketability through CPI videos, specifically for runners. Now to do that, we have a few cool tips lined up for you today. But before we'll go into the actual tips, let's first talk about our approach to making videos. So we want to look at prototyping and video creation, not so much as two consecutive steps, but more a joint process. And the reason for that is that the levels that we make will be the assets and materials that we have to make the videos. So whatever it is that's exciting, that's satisfying, that's unique in our game, we have to make sure that the levels that we make can support that in the videos. So this is something that goes all the way back to ideation. When we create our GDD, we're gonna list hook, we're gonna list art style, we're gonna list a bunch of different things. And one of those things is going to be marketable points, and that's something that we can reference back later. So the first tip is focus on core gameplay. This is something that is very important, especially in the initial stages, and there's a few reasons for that. So first of all, we do want to assess the strength and potential of the actual core gameplay to understand if this is something that we want to work on further. So to do that, we need to show it without too many distractions. Another thing is that elements of the game that are very important to the gameplay itself are not necessarily the best bet in terms of marketability. So that means a very cool end level sequence, a very cool upgrade system. Those are things that might be crucial in the game, but they're not the main message. And also a lot of the times they're not as playable as your platform part. So you want to keep them aside. Here we have an example from Get the Supercar. It's a very straightforward video. We have a car, it upgrades. That's basically all that's happening. And this is a really great example. So the next step is something that if you've been tuning in for a while, if you've been part of Super Monday for a while, this is going to be very familiar. And if you're just joining, well, you're going to hear this probably a lot in the future as well. And this is keeping your videos clean and clear and simple. Now it can be very tempting to add all these effects and animations and collectibles and all these visual layers, especially if that's something that you've worked on and you're satisfied with how it came out. But we need to think of this from the player perspective. And those things can be very distracting and create a situation where the player doesn't really know what to focus on. We have a very limited time to communicate with potential players. And if they don't understand what the game is, they probably won't press on the ad and they probably won't download our game. So that's something that we need to keep a really big focus on, making our videos clean, clear, and easy to understand. Now, something that can help us make our videos easy to understand is colors and the way that we use them. So if we look at the video on the right, we have to kind of stop and actively focus to understand what's going on. There's a lot of mental effort going into understanding that video. Compare that to the video on the left. There's like an instant understanding without thinking too much. I kind of know what's going on. There's stickmen, there's obstacles that I need to avoid. And again, without putting in too much effort, I understand that I need to avoid them and I understand the situation. Now on the side here, you have the colors that we used for this video, but definitely you don't need to use those specific colors. The main takeaway here is the contrast between those colors. We want to choose colors that our brain can easily separate. Another way that we can use colors is through intuitive clues. So this is actually a great example because if you look at the actual gates, there are math functions that very clearly indicate if that gate is going to decrease or increase the character. A plus sign will obviously increase and a minus sign will obviously decrease. But if we look at the video with the gray gates, no idea what's going on, very hard to understand. If we look at the video with the purple and yellow gates, we understand that there are two types of gates, but again, not entirely sure what's going on. The minute we use our color coding, our intuitive colors, green for good and red for bad, video makes sense automatically without thinking about it too much. Now, this is something that can support a bunch of different scenarios. So if you have a fail scenario, running through a red gate can explain that fail. If you have a win scenario, going through a few green gates can explain that win. Now, this is something that's obviously very important for gate runners, but it applies to any other game as well, especially when you want to kind of show what the player should or should not do. So in the last few tips, we've talked about kind of building the scene that you want to film, that you want to record, and now we're going to talk a bit about how we want to record that. So positioning and camera angle are both things that can really affect the outcome of the video. Here in this example, we have two videos, exact same scene, but still they kind of feel different. The experience is a bit different. And this is something that we can use to our advantage. So what does that mean? One example is showing the full platform, having a clear view and a clear understanding of what is coming up. And that's something that can create a sense of control and can work in videos that are can you do better or those types of scenarios. On the other hand, having a very limited view can create suspense, can create challenge, and it really depends what we want to show. Another way that we can use it is going classic versus new. So going for a very classic, very kind of over-the-shoulder runner angle can create a familiar sense, which can work to our favor. On the other hand, having kind of a twist to it can create a more interesting feeling of this is something new. And again, this is something that we want to consider for each game and for each video we create. Another thing we want to consider is the layout of our game. So a game with one main character, like this example, we might want to focus and zoom in on that. A game that has characters multiplying, we might want to zoom out and create space for all those characters to appear. Last but not least is the 5-second rule. So generally, audiences usually watch ad videos for just the first few seconds, and that's really our go time, our money time to showcase what we want to showcase. In these two examples, we have rope band on the left. We have a very clear understanding of the dynamic growth of the game. On the right, we have human vehicle. Again, very clear understanding of the mechanic of the game. And both of these GIFs are only 5 seconds, and you already understand the point of the game. Now, something very important to remember in this regard is that usually we will have a few different scenarios that we want to try. And it's important to make sure that each video starts with a different scenario, so each scenario can kind of get that exposure and that option to showcase. So to wrap this up, I think our main takeaway here is that videos are not just recordings of our game, they're more a process in themselves. So going over quickly, core gameplay, clean and clear videos, intuitive and contrasting colors, position and camera, and 5-second rules. Those are all things that we want to be mindful of throughout the whole process. Okay, so that's it in terms of marketing or marketability. And now I'm going to pass it on to Steven from Unity, who has built and will walk us through the new runner template. To you, Steven.
Thanks, Maya. To reintroduce myself, I am Steven. I'm a software development manager here at Unity. And my team and I, all of us with a decade of experience in mobile games and mobile apps, built this runner template, which is available today. As long as you're using Unity 2021 LTS, you can download this runner game and get started. Now, why do you want this game? Why do you want the template? What does it do for you? Well, our goal here was to kickstart your development so that you can focus on finding your fun and fly quickly to market. That means that this template had to be shippable. It had to be built on gameplay that was successful, that Supersonic has seen before. It had to have a level editor so that you could create your content quickly and efficiently. It had to have common presets so that your audience can have familiar values, and supporting systems so that you can build a polished product quickly. Now, when I say shippable, I mean that this template needed to be development first and bring you from start to finish. Unlike some of our other templates that are very much focused on learning new concepts or discovering new Unity technologies, this template is specifically about shipping a product. That means that you're going to see a lot of very primitive and simple art. That's because we didn't want to add any bloat to your project and stuck with gray boxing. Rather than adding a whole bunch of assets that make it look impressive, but in the end, you just need to tear out, we focus on making sure that you could make this yours. Now, it wouldn't be much of a template without gameplay. We have all the core game mechanics, the collection, the gates, the movement, the progression, as well as a character controller that can allow you to tune acceleration and turn speeds and animations. Everything that we've built is built on a very simple and customizable layer. The code here is not meant to be hyper complex AAA code that takes days or weeks to understand. It's about making sure that you can hit the ground running and get your game complete as quickly as possible. And if that's not enough, we do have tutorials within the editor. If you find yourself a little bit confused or lost, these tutorials will help bring you through how the project is structured. A fan favorite is the level editor. I cannot tell you how many times in game development I've seen tools left on the back burner to burn, and we didn't want that to happen here. We want to remove the friction from creating content, and having things like snapping grids and quick to change values and levels saved out as data is extremely important for that. And just like our gameplay, this is highly customizable. When you create your new unique twists and your unique mechanics, we wanted to make sure that it was very easy to get those into the level editor as well. And this is also a huge tool beyond prototyping, beyond the point where you're submitting to publishers. This is going to help you make those hundreds of levels that you're going to need to satisfy your user base. We've also added in some common presets, best practices that Supersonic has seen before, rather than having to obsess over these values of speed and camera angles. We have some presets in here that can allow you to just find something that seems to be the right genre for you. And last but not least is the supporting systems. These things are essential to making a product that your users see as a complete game, a polished game. Things like UI, window management, event systems, screen flow, save data. I could go on. But the point here is that these systems are 90% of the time the same every time you make a product, and we wanted to remove that monotony. We've given you the basics of all of these systems that are functional and ready for you to make your own and make more visually appealing. But the point here is that when you get to prototyping, you can focus on your fun. That's all for me, and I'm going to pass it back to Zvi for Q&A.
Awesome. Steven, that was super, super fascinating. Thank you so much for all that work you guys done. Like I said, stay with us. We have a lot more value to unlock with this new partnership and being a part of the Unity umbrella at Supersonic. So we're going to get into the Q&A. Let's jump right into it and see what questions we got. Okay, this one's going to be, I guess, for me or Maya. We'll take it together and we can each answer. Why not?
Yeah.
Okay, so the first question is, where do you suggest we look for inspiration for a strong theme for our runners? Obviously, my initial instinct is say TikTok. You know, if you go ahead and visit TikTok, there are a lot of trendy themes and videos that have a lot of views. Definitely a great place for inspiration. What about you? Have any ideas?
So TikTok is definitely somewhere we want to look. We want to search for like maybe ASMR, maybe DIY, kind of those types of themes, whatever's trending. And another place that we can look is actually in the top charts on other runners. A very kind of easy idea, or not easy, but simple way to look at it is taking one runner and kind of changing the theme, or taking a theme and changing the mechanic, and taking inspiration from games that you see kind of reaching the charts. You don't have to focus specifically on runners for that. You can take a different hyper-casual game with a strong theme and kind of turn it into a runner.
Cool. Awesome. Can we develop a runner game that doesn't have a human as a main character but features objects instead? That is an absolute yes. You know, we have Arrowfest. That's just off the top of my head. There's plenty
Balls
of
go
these.
high. Not
Balls
exactly
go
a runner,
high.
but again, yeah.
Going balls, definitely a clear one also. So definitely is something that you can look at and might even give you that that edge you've been looking for. So definitely I would recommend that. How many levels should we build for a prototype? What do you think, Maya?
So it really depends on the type of prototype, but we do want to have, especially in runners that have usually a very short level, we do want to have a bit more, so like 8, 10 more or less, to kind of give us a real understanding of, do people kind of interact with this game as well in terms of level drop?
Awesome.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think that part of it helps you explore the gray areas of CPIs that you would want to go ahead and try to more creatives to lower and improve that marketability. So the in-game could really show you a good, strong core, engagement, and definitely help with the content that you might need for the game. Next question is for Steven. Where can we find the runner template, Steven, in Unity? How can we get our hands on it?
As long as you're using Unity Hub, you should be able to.
See with
as
me?
long as you're using Unity Hub and
All
a
right, cool.
2021.3
Thanks,
version.
Steven.
Oh, sorry. As long as you're using Unity Hub and a 2021.3 version, it will be there. If you're not seeing it, you might just need to restart your Unity Hub.
Okay, next question is, which runner works best nowadays? That's a very good question, and I think that I'm gonna let Maya answer that one.
So yeah, that's a $200,000 question. It's really hard to say, because if you watch the top charts and you follow that, things can move pretty fast. Multiplier gates, like Zvi said before, are usually very strong and have been strong for a while. Kind of dynamic growth and evolution kind of runners. Those are more safe bets. But again, if you have an interesting idea that you want to try, if you've seen something that you want to iterate, there's definitely room for that as well.
Awesome, thank you. Of the 5 tips for marketability, this one's for you. Is there one that you would consider most important?
Good question, but no, because again, we want to look at making the video as a whole process in itself. So we want to focus on the core, we want it clean and clear, we want to have the colors correct. We want all of those things together. So there's no one that's more important. We want to have it within the first 5 seconds or nobody's going to see it. So it's all pretty important.
Awesome. The next question is, does Unity have any other templates for hyper-casual genres?
Great question.
Steven?
This is the first that we built. Of course, the more popular a particular type of template gets, the more likely we'll make more.
All right. We got another question. Is a shooting mechanic a new trend in runner games nowadays?
Want to take that?
It's a good question, because we have seen some uptick in these kind of gun-oriented shooting games. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on and explore. If you saw in the presentation, I did share that potential theme might be a good thing to look into. So definitely you should explore your options. One caveat to this is keep in mind that these games can tend to be a little bit male-oriented, and that is not something you want to see when you're trying to have the market. It can impact marketability. So just keep that in mind. It's not a killer, but it is something to consider. Let's see what else. What other questions we got? Come on, you guys. We can ask more questions. Don't be shy. And I'll make sure to answer whatever we miss. We'll make sure to answer in the Q&A. So yeah. We discussed how we can find concepts with lower CPI, look at trendy social platforms like TikTok and explore that option. So it's definitely something you want to look at. Are there any colors that are trending now that might be better for both the game and runner creatives, Maya?
I wouldn't say there's necessarily a color that you have to use. Let's say classically speaking, we want a lighter background and more popping colors for our main character, and we want to have, again, green for good and red for bad. But that being said, the main thing is to make sure that there's not too much going on. You don't have too many strong colors all at once, and that you have a good contrast between the colors.
All right. Is there a particular theme that you think works well with runners right now? So we know that runners is a very, very strong genre and mechanic in hyper casual. I wouldn't say there's a particular theme. It's about exploring the boundaries of what the themes we know with the mechanics we know. So combining some of those, like we've seen, the stacking, the runner, is definitely some way to explore. It might even give you the edge you need to stand out and be a winner in our runner contest with a 200,000K reward off the bat. So definitely something that you guys should take a look into and explore. Let's see what else we have here. What would be the recommendations to increase playtime in runner games?
So that's a great question. And again, it's very hard to answer, but what we want to focus on is making sure that the levels aren't too repetitive, that we have content that's unfolding. Again, this is a bit further than the initial test, but that we have content that is a bit unfolding, that we play with the challenge. The game gets more challenging as the player plays it, and it's not the same experience. Yeah, I think there's a lot more that goes into that, but when you ideate and when you think about your concept, you want to think about progression, how that game is going to develop, how you can ask yourself specifically how you can add challenge as the levels progress, and that's a very good place to start.
Awesome, thank you. Steven, this one's for you, man. Will the runner template be developed further? Are there any changes you guys are planning on doing, adding?
Right now, we are actually talking about what the second iteration of this template looks like. It's a little bit of a stay tuned answer, but we are talking about it.
Definitely stay tuned. That's all we can say. So we got one more question. This is a good one. Have you experienced any drastic changes in metrics just by changing a detail like color, camera angle, or somehow defined at first output? So I would say, is there any small change you've seen that made a dramatic impact in runners?
So it's definitely worth testing a few different colors, a few different angles to see what works best. When we have videos that don't really follow best practice, kind of steering them in the right way can definitely have a good effect on them. So if we have a main character that's the same color as the platform, changing those colors can have a really drastic effect. There's also, thinking what scene you want to show from the game, and definitely trying new creatives can have an effect and can reduce CPI by a few good percentages.
All right, this is our last question. If we missed any of the questions, like I mentioned, we will definitely respond to you guys on our social media, so make sure to follow us and you'll get your answer. What is a good CPI for a runner game with gates? It's a great question. So it does vary, and there's a reason we test both on Facebook and TikTok and Iron Source. I would recommend 40, in the area of 40. Lower is always better and shows great potential. You have to understand that runner games are very saturated and usually have a lower LTV. So you have to consider that with the marketability and keep that in mind. Really, the lower the better, and it helps that margin. What do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. Runners are a pretty competitive genre, so we do want to have very strong marketability from the start.
Okay, I think that's it.
Yeah.
So if we missed any of the questions, we're going to go ahead and answer them on our social, so make sure to check our Instagram for that. And we'll go ahead and upload this Super Monday to YouTube as well, so you can always come back and revisit. And if you have any questions, feel free to shout out to us and shoot us a question. So Thank you guys so much for joining us today. It was an absolute pleasure. Steven, thank you for being with us, and we will see you guys on our next Super Monday.